Hello and welcome. During this video, we are going to walk through the recommended workflow for entering in client data if you are in a medical role at your pregnancy clinic. Before we get started, let's refer back to this diagram that we discussed in the client file overview video. Remember that all of the information about the client is stored in the client's electronic chart in CenterPiece. The electronic chart consists of the client file, the client case, and all other related visits and activity forms. In the previous video, we discussed the recommended data entry workflow for client advocates or non-medical personnel. We talked about how the client file is usually entered in by the receptionist when the client is checked in for their appointment, and we walked through entering in all of this information, including the case, the visit, and the specific non-medical activity forms via the quick form. During this video, we are going to talk about how to enter in the medical forms, such as the sonogram form, STI form, health history form, vitals form, and medical notes. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we begin data entry, let's review this timeline. We're going to be entering in medical forms for a client named Sue Miller, who came into the center a few days ago on March 9th for a pregnancy test. You can see the services she received on the 9th along with the forms that were added to her client file. We were unable to perform a sonogram for her on March 9th, so we scheduled her for an ultrasound appointment on the 11th of March. When the receptionist scheduled Sue's sonogram appointment, she also sent Sue a digital version of the health history and consent for ultrasound forms for her to complete and return through the mobile intake application prior to her visit on March 11th. In this video, we're going to say that today is March 11th, and I'm going to walk you through entering in these medical forms. Then, at the end of the video, I'll show you how to record the STI test results. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll begin by first searching for Sue's client file. To do that, I'll click on the Client tab, and then I'll enter in a few letters of her last name and her first name, and I'll click Apply. The client files that match the criteria are displayed. I'll click here to open Sue's client file, and the first thing I want to do is click on her Activity tab. And you can see the forms that were previously entered in for her visit on March 9th. The pregnancy test, the concept shared, and the outside referral form. Next, we're going to enter in the medical forms. And to do that, we're going to click on the Medical tab. And I'm going to go ahead and click here to close the contact information so I can see a bit more. Now, the medical section was designed to be a centralized place to insert, store, edit, and review medical information about the client, and is therefore where we recommend medical personnel do all of their data entry. Notice this header information that's provided right here. Notice that this is her second case. We can see her birth date, and then this information that is specific to case number 2, her LMP and her due date. Now, her due date is currently being pulled from the pregnancy test that was previously entered in, but once the sonogram form is entered in, it will pull the due date from the most recent sonogram form. Now, if this information isn't filled out, maybe because it's a same-day ultrasound and the data entry person hasn't had a chance to enter in their forms, that's okay. You can still enter in your medical forms, and this information will be populated once the data entry person completes their forms. Okay, so first notice that there are 5 sections here under the Medical tab. We have sonograms, health history, vitals, STI tests, and medical notes. Let's walk through filling out each of these sections during this video. To do that, let's continue on with our example and say that our client is here for her sonogram. Given that, my first step is to conduct the pre-ultrasound screening by walking through the health history form with the client. Now remember that when the receptionist scheduled her sonogram appointment, she sent Sue the digital health history form to complete before her visit. But you can see that there is currently no health history form. Notice right here, however, that there is an alert on her file showing that she has mobile intake forms that have been returned but have not been added to her file. And you'll see this alert on any client file that has returned mobile forms where the forms have not been processed or added to the file. So let's click on this link and go to the mobile intake inbox and process her forms and add them to her file. Notice after I click on the link that I'm taken to the mobile intake inbox and a filter has been applied using her file ID, so I'm only looking at the mobile forms for Sue. To begin processing her forms, I'll click to expand the row details. The first thing you see are the forms that have been returned. You can see that she's returned a health history form and a consent for ultrasound form. Right here, I need to select which case I want to add these forms to. I'll click the drop-down and select case number 2 because these forms are related to her pregnancy for case number 2. And just a quick note here, if you wanted to start a new case for the client, you can simply leave the case blank and the forms will be applied to a new case form. Okay, so after selecting case number 2, I'll click Start Intake and the quick form is launched. Now, since we're just wanting to add her health history and consent form to her file, we aren't going to review any of this information right now. Instead, I'm going to scroll down to the visit form and quickly fill this out. Since these forms are for her visit today, we'll leave the date as is, and I'm going to select the primary purpose of today's visit is for a sonogram. We'll say she came into the Arlington location, so I'll leave this as is, and I'll select that no one came with her to the visit. I'll continue scrolling down, and you can see that the health history form is checked and open. All her client answers are displayed right here. Again, I'm not going to go through this now, so I'll scroll down to the bottom, and the next form you see is the consent for ultrasound. I'm going to click Save and Open to save the forms to her client file and open it. Once in her client file, notice that the alert showing us that she had returned mobile intake forms has been removed because the forms have been added to her file. I'll click on the Documents tab and you can see the Read and Sign consent form right here. I'll quickly click to open it and you can see the digital signature. Next, I'm going to click on the Medical tab and you can see her health history form right here. Now, I know that I walked through processing the mobile forms really quickly, so if you would like more in-depth information on mobile intake and how to process returned forms, please watch the mobile intake videos in the Video Training Center, which can be found in the Help module. Now, also note, if you currently don't use mobile intake and instead use the paper forms, you would need to review and manually enter in the health history form. Okay, so let's continue on with our example. We were beginning to conduct her pre-ultrasound screening by reviewing her health history form prior to performing the sonogram. Now that her form has been added to her file, we can continue on with our pre-ultrasound screening by clicking Edit to open the form and review her answers. Notice that the health history form has been tied to case number 2, like we selected when we processed her forms. Sue's answers are all displayed right here. As the nurse, I would simply review the questions and answers with Sue, and then here at the bottom of the form, I would fill out the office use only section. To review this with the client, I can either open the form on a laptop or tablet and take it into the room with me, or if a laptop or tablet isn't available, I can print her filled out form by clicking Control and then A, and then right-clicking and selecting Print. This will print the entire form for me so that I can review it with the client. Once I've reviewed the form with the client, I'll need to complete the office use only section. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out that there were no medical alerts, and then for the nursing plan, most nurses actually won't fill this section out yet, but instead will go ahead and save the form and they'll enter in the nursing plan after the sonogram. But for our example, we're going to go ahead and fill this out now. I'm going to select that I confirmed prenatal care and that I gave prenatal vitamins. And just a quick note here, the selection list for your medical alerts and the nursing plan are completely customizable. To edit your list, simply click on the ellipsis button and make any changes that you need to. Okay, next right here, notice that I can enter in any comments. Here at the bottom, I can choose to lock the form. Locking the form prevents any other users except you from modifying or deleting the form. and you have the ability to lock all of the medical forms. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this, and then I'll click Save and Close, and my updates are saved to the form. Notice that the medical alerts and the nursing plan are displayed right here. Also notice that because this client marked that she was allergic to something, it's displayed right here to alert all medical personnel that she has an allergy. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, if you haven't yet transitioned to mobile intake and the health history form wasn't already returned by the client and saved to her file, you will need to fill out the form for the first time with the client. To do that, all you need to do is click Add New next to Health History, and a new blank form will open up. You can then complete the form with the client on a laptop or a tablet, or you can print a blank version using the Control-A method that I showed you earlier and manually fill out the form. Also note that you can pre-print a health history form that's formatted for printing by clicking on the Office Forms tab here in the Client module. Notice the health history form right here. And for more help on printing out the health history and the other client forms, please watch the Office Forms videos that can be found in the Video Training Center in the Help module. Okay, so let's keep moving with our example, and we've completed the health history form. So next, if you're a clinic who collects vitals, you can enter that information into the vitals form by clicking Add New right here. Again, notice that the case is defaulted to case number 2, and her visit defaults to the current visit date. If I needed to add a new visit date, however, all I would have to do is click here on this ellipsis button. Okay, so I'll go ahead and fill out her vitals information. I'll enter in her height, then her weight. Next, I'll enter in her temperature, pulse rate, respiration rate, and her blood pressure. Again, I have a comment section if I needed to include any additional information. I'll go ahead and lock the form and click Save and Close. Notice the vital summary information is easy for me to review right here. Okay, so with my pre-ultrasound forms now filled out, I'm ready to perform the sonogram. Once I complete the sonogram, I can enter in the measurements and any other information into the sonogram form. To do that, I'll click Add New right here. Now, I'm not going to fill out all of this for time purposes, but I'll enter in a few things. And I do want to enter in her due date so you can see how that's displayed in the Medical tab header. Notice that her current due date that's being pulled from the pregnancy test, I'm going to go ahead and pull this over so you can see it, is October 8th of 2021. Now I'm going to go ahead and enter in October 12th into her sonogram form for her due date. Next, I'll say that she's 8 weeks and 1 day pregnant, and then I'm going to scroll down and notice these assessment questions. I'll select that my assessment is that she's likely to carry and that she stated she wants to carry to term. Also notice that I have a tab where I can upload attachments to this sonogram form. Now, as soon as I upload attachments to the sonogram form and save it, it's going to be submitted to the physician sign-off queue to review and be signed off by the center's medical director. Many times, however, nurses prefer to review their scans, notes, and measurements before submitting it to the physician for sign-off. So we've provided this hold submission to physician queue flag. By clicking on this flag, even if scans are added to the sonogram, it will not be submitted to the physician sign-off queue for review. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next, let's click on the Attachments tab. Notice the different types of files that I can upload right here. I'll go ahead and click here and let's add some attachments. Now, just a quick note. Because I'm not networked to an ultrasound machine, I'm going to be uploading documents from my computer's hard drive. When you do this, however, you will have your ultrasound machine networked. So you'll see your ultrasound machine's shared folder and you can select the files from the shared folder. Or if you've chosen to export images to a flash drive, you'll locate your flash drive and select the files from there. So you don't need to store ultrasound images outside of our system. You will either attach them from the network ultrasound machine's shared folder or a flash drive. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select the images that I want to upload to the sonogram form. I'm going to select several images, a Cine Heart Motion video clip, and a PDF machine report. I'm going to click on my first file, and then I'm going to hold the Shift key down and select the last file so I can select the whole group. Then I'll click Open, and once uploaded, I'll click Save and Close. Notice the ultrasound is being displayed right here, and I can see some summary details. Now also notice that the due date here in the header has changed and is now showing that she's due on the 12th of October. And that's because this is being pulled from the most recent sonogram. And of course, if a sonogram form isn't entered in, then it's pulled from the pregnancy test form. Okay, so to review my attachments, I'm going to simply click here to expand the row details. Notice my scanned images are all right here. I can click to open them, and notice a light box opens, and I can click through my images by using this arrow right here. I can also view my images full screen by clicking here. Okay, next notice the Cine Heart Motion video clip, and I can click here to view this full screen, or I can play it inline. Below that, I have the machine report. Now obviously I don't have a signature for this sonogram because it hasn't even been submitted to the physician sign-off queue yet, but I want to show you a sonogram form that has been signed off really quick just so you can see what it looks like. To do that, I'm going to select to show the medical forms for all cases instead of just case number 2, and notice this sonogram from her previous pregnancy that is recorded in case number 1. Notice that the sonogram was performed on the 14th of November 2019 and was signed off on the 18th of November 2019 by Dr. Susan Williams. I'm going to click to expand the row details, and notice that I can still see all of the scans and other attachments, and because the medical director reviewed and signed off on the sonogram, I also now have a limited ultrasound report. And if you need to print the limited ultrasound report, you'll want to print it from here because you can view and print without having to download. For more information on the physician sign-off process, please watch the physician sign-off videos in the Video Training Center. Okay, so now let's go back to the client's current case so we can complete the rest of our data entry, and we'll come back to the sonogram form and submit it for physician sign-off. Okay, so the next form you see here is the STI test form. Let's say that in addition to performing the sonogram, we also did an STI test for Sue. To fill in this information, simply click Add New next to STI Tests. At this point, because we don't have the results back, we'll just be entering in the specific tests that we performed. I'll leave myself selected as the person who administered the test, and then I'll select that we tested for herpes and that we tested for yeast. And again, because we don't have the results back, I'm going to leave the results as pending, and I'll click Save and Close. Notice that I can see the tests that were performed, and I can see that the results are pending. Now, once more, I want to go ahead and show you the STI test from her previous case so you can see what the STI test form looks like once the results have been received and recorded. I'll scroll down and notice this previous test was for chlamydia and for yeast. You can see that the chlamydia test was positive and the candida yeast test was negative. You can also see that the results were received on the 25th of November 2019. I'm going to click to expand the row details, and you can see even more information. Next to the positive test, you can see the treatment that was prescribed right here. Also notice that the lab report for the chlamydia test was uploaded and saved. Okay, so let's once again go back to her current case, and the last thing that we have under the medical tab is the note section. To add a new note, simply click Add New. I'll go ahead and type in my note, and if this is a medical related note, you'll want to be sure and click This is a medical note so it will be filed here under the medical tab. I can also choose to lock the note, and then I'm going to click Save and Close. Okay, so at this point we are done with our data entry for this client appointment. We've updated her health history form, entered in her vitals, entered in the sonogram form, and added our scans, Cine heart motion clip, and the machine report, and we've also entered in the STI tests that we performed, and we've recorded our medical notes. Now that the data entry is complete and we've reviewed everything, we are now ready to submit the sonogram form to the physician sign-off queue so the medical director can review and sign off on the sonogram. To do that, I can simply click Edit right here. Then I would uncheck the Hold Submission to Physician Queue flag and click Save and Close, and the sonogram form and the attachments will be submitted. Or I can go to the physician sign-off queue and make the changes there. Now I want to take you to the queue to make the changes because I want to show you how easy it is to manage several sonogram forms at once in case you have that need. So from the client file, I'll just click on the Client tab and then on the Physician Sign-Off button in the taskbar. Notice that there are no unsigned forms here, which means that there are no sonogram forms that the physician needs to review and sign off on. To see a list of the forms that have not yet been submitted, simply click on the Unsubmitted tab right here. The next thing that I will want to do is click on this paper clip to sort the list and display the sonogram forms that have attachments at the top. Notice Sue's sonogram form right here. I'll click Edit, and then I'll scroll down and uncheck the Hold Submission to Physician Queue checkbox, and I'll click Save and Close. Notice that her sonogram has been removed from the Unsubmitted tab. I'll click on the Unsigned tab, and you can see the sonogram is now displayed here and is waiting for physician review and sign off. Okay, so I just wanted to show you this queue and how to edit the sonogram form from the queue, because if you're managing multiple ultrasounds, it's easier to see all of them from here rather than having to open each individual client file. Okay, so since that's been submitted, let's go back to Sue's file, and I want to show you one more thing before we close. To quickly get back to her file, I'm going to click on her name right here and we're taken into her electronic chart. I'll once again click on the Medical tab, and I want to show you how to record the results of your STI test. So let's assume that it's a couple days later and we've received the results. To record the results, I'll click Edit on her STI form, and the first thing I need to do is enter in the date of the results right here. Okay, then I'll need to select the test results. Let's say that the Candida yeast test was positive, and I'm going to go ahead and select a treatment for that right here. And just like the medical alerts and nursing plan on the health history form, this treatment drop-down is also completely editable by you. Simply click on the ellipsis button to make any changes that you need to. Okay, next I'm going to select that the herpes test was negative, and I'll click that this is not applicable, and I'll select that yes, the client did receive the results. I'll leave my name right here as the person who gave the client the test results. And next I'll select that she did make a commitment to abstinence, and yes, she did rededicate her life to Christ. I can also enter in any comments, and again I can lock the form. Also notice that I can click on this tab and upload the PDF of the lab results. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll first click Attach, and then I'll click on the lab results right here and click Open, and the lab results are added to her STI test form. I'll click Save and Close, and that's it. We've successfully entered in her STI test results and uploaded the lab results. I'll click here to expand the row details, and you can see the tests, any applicable treatments, and the attached lab results. Okay, well that's about it for data entry for medical personnel. Now again, I walked you through our recommended workflow for medical personnel to complete data entry, but there are many different ways that you can do data entry. The software is set up to be flexible and allow you to create processes that work best for you and your clinic. In summary, during this video, you learned that the client file is usually created in the scheduler when the receptionist checks the client in for their appointment. You also learned that the data entry team will usually enter in the non-medical forms prior to the medical personnel entering in their forms. You learned that medical personnel enter in their forms through the Medical tab in the client file, and you learned that you will see an alert message at the top of the client file for mobile forms that have been returned but have not yet been processed and added to the client file. You learned that the Medical tab houses the client's health history, vitals, sonogram forms, STI tests, and medical notes, and you also learned that you can upload attachments to both the sonogram and the STI test form. And lastly, you learned that once sonogram scans are uploaded and the sonogram form is saved, it's submitted to the physician sign-off queue for the medical director to review and sign off on the sonogram. I hope this suggested workflow will help you add medical information to your client's charts easily and efficiently. If you would like to learn more information about the mobile intake process or the physician sign-off process, we have an entire video series for each of these workflows in the Video Training Center in the Help module. Please also continue to watch the rest of the videos in the Client Data Entry section to learn how to continue to build out and add information to your client's electronic chart. Thanks for your time.